For 3 years, I was afraid of the wrong man. It started with small things. A window I know I closed, standing open an inch, the curtain breathing in the dark, a door I never locked. My car keys sitting in the bowl by the entryway when I could have sworn I left them in my coat. Then it stopped being small. There was a man, always at the edge of things. Across the street when I left work, 3 cars back in traffic. At the far end of the train platform, never looking at me, always somehow facing the same direction I was about to turn. Tall, dark coat. A stillness to him that made the crowd around him look frantic by comparison. I reported him twice. Both times the officer asked me for a description, and both times I realized I had never once seen his face. My fiancé, Julian, told me I was working too hard. He said it kindly. He always said everything kindly. He installed a second lock on my apartment door himself, and he held my hand while I cried about how stupid I felt, and he told me nobody was coming for me. He was lying, and he knew exactly who was coming. The parking garage was on the 4th level, in that gray concrete light that makes everything look like it already happened. I remember the sound of my own heels. I remember the elevator chime behind me, and thinking nothing of it, because I had heard that chime 1,000 times. I remember turning around and seeing a face I loved. I want to tell you I fought. I want to tell you I screamed something brave. What I actually said was his name in a small voice, like a question, like there was still an explanation coming. And then there was cold, and then there was nothing at all. Here is the strange part. I remember the nothing. Not darkness, nothing has no color, but I remember being aware inside it, the way you're aware of a room while you're asleep in it. And I remember a voice in that nothing, low and ragged, repeating one sentence over and over like a man arguing with God. Not this one, not this one, not her. I woke up 2 days later and I woke up wrong. The first thing I noticed was the sound. Not loud, layered. I could hear a clock ticking in another wing of the house. I could hear rain that hadn't started falling yet. I could hear my own blood, and it moved too slowly and it moved wrong. The second thing I noticed was the hunger. It didn't feel like wanting food. It felt like grief, like something enormous had been taken out of me and my whole body had decided to go looking for it. The third thing I noticed was the mirror across the room, and the woman in it with my face in my mouth and a thin, dried line of blood at the corner of it, and eyes the color of a coin left out in the frost. The door opened behind me. I knew that stillness before I turned around. "You," I said. "Me," he said. His name was Ivar. He had a voice like something dragged over stone, and he stood exactly far enough away that I would not feel cornered. And I understood in that moment that the distance was deliberate and that he had been keeping it for 3 years. "You killed me," I said. "No." He said it fast. It was the only time all night he moved quickly. "No, I got there afterward. 90 seconds afterward." He looked at the floor. "I have been faster than 90 seconds for 200 years. Not that night." "Then what did you do to me?"
Welcome to Elysium, where fantasy meets choice. Step into a world built entirely around what you want. Choose from a lineup of dream companions: the rugged biker, the commanding CEO, the billionaire art collector, the untamed cowboy, the mysterious fey prince, or design your own from the ground up, blending the traits, personality, and presence that speak to you. No two fantasies are the same, and at Elysium, yours doesn't have to fit anyone else's mold. Every companion is yours to shape: his look, his voice, his story, his role in yours. Whether you want steady devotion, playful banter, quiet intensity, or a slow burn romance, Elysium adapts to you, not the other way around. This isn't about settling for a template. It's about building the connection you actually want, exactly the way you want it. Your fantasy, your rules, your man. Discover your dream companion at elysium.dating.
"I made a choice you didn't get to make." His jaw moved. "You can hate me for it. I would recommend it." He told me the rest sitting on the floor, back against the wall, hands open on his knees like a man surrendering. He told me about my great-grandmother and her mother before that, a bloodline that carries something old and useful, something his kind has hunted and traded and killed for since before there were maps. He told me he'd made a promise to a woman in 1891 that he would keep her daughters alive. He had kept it through 4 generations. I was the 5th. "So the window," I said, "the locks, the keys." Someone had been inside your apartment twice. His eyes came up. Not me. I never came in. I want you to know I never came in. You could have told me, and you would have believed a man in a dark coat following you, who explained about the blood. Something almost like a smile. You did the correct thing, Mira. You were afraid of me. You should have been afraid of the one you weren't afraid of. I stopped breathing then, which, as it turns out, I no longer strictly needed to do, because I had smelled the garage. 12 minutes before Julian stepped out of that elevator, I had smelled cedar and cold metal and the cologne I bought him myself 2 Christmases ago, and I had thought absolutely nothing of it, because it was the smell of safety. He knew about the bloodline, I said. My voice came out flat and far away. He was never in love with me. He was in love with what you were worth. Ivar's hands had closed. There is a court that pays for it. He was going to be paid twice, once for you and once for the location of the last one who protected you. I sat down on the edge of that unfamiliar bed and I did not cry, and that frightened me more than anything else had. The girl who cried in Julian's kitchen about being followed was gone. Something colder had come to sit in her chair. I want him, I said. Mira, not you. I looked up. Me. I want him to look at my face when he understands what he made. Ivar was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and he crossed the room, and he did something he had never once done in 3 years. He came within arm's reach. Then we will need you to be very good at being human, he said, for about a week. I called Julian on a Tuesday. I cried into the phone. I told him I'd been in an accident, that I'd been in and out, that I'd woken up in a hospital 2 counties over and couldn't remember how I got there. I told him I was frightened and I needed him, and I needed him to come alone because I couldn't bear anyone else seeing me like this. He came in 40 minutes. He must have driven like a man on fire. There is something almost funny about that, if you hold it at the right angle, how fast he came and how much he must have needed to see the body himself. He came up the drive at dusk with flowers. I let him in. I let him hold me. I let him tell me, in that kind voice, that nobody was coming for me. And I stood in his arms in the dark of that entryway and listened to his heart, and it was beating fast, not with fear, with anticipation, and I felt the last piece of the woman I used to be go quiet inside me. Julian, I said into his shoulder. 4th level? The elevator chimed. He went very still. You said my name, I said. That's the part I can't get past. I said yours like a question, and you didn't hesitate. He shoved me back and reached into his coat, and he was fast. He'd been trained by someone. I could see it in the way he moved. And it did not matter, even slightly. I caught his wrist. I want to be honest with you about this part, because I've had a long time to think about it. I did not feel powerful. I felt sad. I felt sad in a way I don't have language for, holding the wrist of a man I had chosen a wedding date with, and feeling how small the bones were. There were people who paid you, I said. I want their names. He gave them to me. He gave them to me in under a minute, which tells you everything you ever needed to know about Julian. Ivar was in the doorway the entire time. He never came in. Of course he didn't. And when it was finished and the floor was quiet and my hands were shaking and I was still somehow standing, I turned around and he was already reaching for his coat. What are you doing? I said. Leaving. He didn't look at me. You have the names. You have the strength. You don't need a guardian, and you certainly don't need to spend the rest of a very long life looking at the man who took your death away from you. He got the coat halfway on. I'll be far. If you ever call, I'll hear it. But you'll never see me at the end of a train platform again. You have my word. Ivar. It's the only decent thing I have left to give you, Mira, so let me... Ivar. He stopped. I crossed the room. 200 years old, and he actually flinched when I got close. This enormous, patient, terrible creature who had followed me through 3 years of rain and never once said a word, holding still now like a man waiting to be sentenced. For 3 years, I said, you decided things for me, where I was safe, what I could know, whether I lived. I took the coat out of his hands and dropped it on the floor. You don't get to decide this one. Mira, you watched me for 3 years, I said. Look at me for 1 minute. He did. And that was the first time I ever saw his face properly. Not a silhouette, not a shape under a street lamp. Just a man who had been standing in the cold outside my life for a very long time because he decided the inside of it was better off without him in it. "Stay," I said. "Not as a guard. Not as a promise you made to someone in 1891. I found his hand. "As the person I choose. Because this time I get to choose." Something broke open in his face. We didn't burn the house down. We didn't ride off into a storm. He made me tea, badly, in a kitchen he clearly never used, and we sat on the floor with our backs against the cabinets and talked until the sky went gray. About my great-grandmother, about the 1890s, about how absolutely no one had told him that vampires cannot make tea. I laughed. It surprised us both. I have a long life now. I have a list of names, and I intend to work through all of them. But I also have mornings. Real ones. In the last hour before dawn, with the curtains open because we can, and a man beside me who spent a century in the dark on my behalf and still asks permission before he takes my hand. He asked me once if I forgave him. I told him the truth. I told him I was afraid of the wrong man for 3 years, and then I got the rest of forever to be right about him instead.